Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Today's video is about this raised runner 23 degree head. Weingartner Racing stuff, of course. It's cast by Brodix. This is a actual headhunter head that I've modified extensively. So if you want to see what the headhunter looks like out of the box, you feel free to look back into some of my other videos. I have one that I did for my own personal engine. It's an oval port. So if you get the headhunters from Brodix, they're a smaller oval port design, and they're dramatically different than this. This one, of course, is going on a more spicy deal than what I was using my headhunters on, so the ports themselves look totally different. Now, as you can tell, the ports are raised up. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but because I've moved everything to get more area, they're about 300 thousandths taller than stock. So it's raised up 300 thousandths, which is, it's still raised runner, but it's not as much as some of the other ones. Like when I get done with this 10X head, that one's really raised up compared to this. It's another 300 to 400 thousandths taller than this one. And there's a bunch of advantage for the raised runner head. Peak flow usually stays about the same. It might gain a little bit, but in the mid-lift range, I'm talking between usually from 4 to 6, it's so much better. And you'll see whenever I show you the flow numbers on this thing. But this is the head. It's a 23 degree head. Now it does require shaft rockers, just like the headhunter does normally. So it takes a 450 offset on the intake side and an offset on the lifter of 180. Now on this one, let me flip the head over for you. There's a bunch of different options that are done. So it has I'm gonna use sorry, my finger got smashed in the deal, so it looks horrible. Smashing the stupid toolbox, matter of fact, the door wouldn't stay closed, and so I slammed it not thinking my hand was there. Yes, it hurts. Anyway, when they come from the factory, they'll have a 68cc chamber CNC ported, because the way they order these is full CNC ported. You can get them without. You have to talk to your dealer like me about that. But I have changed some things from them. So for one, which you guys could tell because this is a powder deal, the chambers are softened. That's what this is here and here. This is a softening of the chamber. And what it does, it reduces the quench pad area by making it like a conical design, which hopefully you can catch it this way. Hard to see. But what it does is it reduces, it doesn't make any more power. I'll tell you that. So doing the softening of the chamber does not make more power. But what it does do, if you're running a powder, which what this guy is going to run nitrous, it allows you to put more nitrous in it without having a problem with detonation. So if you just ran it straight up and changed nothing, you're probably not going to make any more power. But what it does, like I said, is it gives you a bigger tuning window, so you can actually probably put more nitrous to it than you could not having this done. So in the end, you end up making more power. But if you're using a smaller shot, it also gives you a bigger window of not tearing up stuff. So chamber softening itself, that's what it's really good for. It's more of it helps with tuning, broader tuning window, which is always good not to tear up parts. From the flow-wise standpoint, the softening of the chambers almost always hurts it, because it's going to take away, even though I dropped the valve job down, it takes away part of this top cut, and it makes a weird transition from this to this. So from my experience, every time I've ever done it, it has lost flow. Now, how much? Not that much. I only bring it up because it is losing some, so it's just something to be aware of. Does it affect power as far as the loss of flow? No. But just bringing that up. Now, for the intake valve size, this is a 215 intake valve, and the exhaust valve is a 1/600. This is a 40-60 spacing head, which means the intake valve is moved 40 over this way towards the center, and the exhaust is moved 60 over this way. That allows you to run that bigger valve. They come with this AMCO 45 seat on the exhaust to get the heat out of it, because it's a 50 degree intake valve job, but a 55 degree I put on the exhaust. The 55 degree helps it flow more, especially in the higher lifts. And this is probably one of the higher flowing exhaust ports that I've done. The catch is they do wear out faster. And because I run a 55 degree, the AMCO helps get the heat out of the valve. So that seat material. That's not so much an issue with the intake, of course, because it's it's cooler because you have a cooler charge coming through. So I also did this. This has 5/16 intake stems and 11/32 on exhaust. And the reason for the smaller intake stems is it reduces the weight of the valve. And since this is a raised runner head, everything got moved up, so it does need a longer valve. So that's part of the reason. I do want to show this. I'm sure I'll have comments going on this one. hopefully you guys can see that. Look how big that is. That's a big port. That hole right there, I'm not going to put a sleeve in. Because on the headhunters, you can see the step here. This takes a 3/8 head stud right through here and here. That's the only two of them that do that. Well, usually the normal ones are 7/16, and whenever they go through on a normal one, there's so much play in the hole itself that it's a pretty big gap. But when you put a 3/8 through here, the stud, it's actually a pretty snug fit on that hole. Because of that, it prevents, you know, some of the air from going through the other side. In other words, it helps block off some of it. It's not completely airtight. Now, some of you might get worried about that, but on a 3/8 stud in between, I never run a sleeve. I can, because I just get a K-liner and put it through there, but I won't. On the 7/16 stuff, I do. So I'm just pointing that out because I know someone's going to spot it and wonder why. By the way, when I flow it, I have a 3/8 bolt that goes through here, so it's acting just like it does. Just letting you know. Now, as far as the port design itself, this port's pretty similar to my Dragon Slayers. The only difference is being a raised runner design. Matter of fact, this one, if you compare it, like all the dimensions of them, as far as the bowl and the throat area dimensions, they're exactly the same as my bigger 255X head, which is the bigger Dragon Slayer that I have. It takes a 215 intake valve. They're the same. It's just raised runner. But because this thing's raised runner, it moves more air. So let's go ahead and look at those flow numbers because they are pretty outstanding, even though with the softened chamber. Here are the flow numbers, and I'll show you because they're from two different vintages. I have two vintages. I have a Superflow 750 and, of course, the Sane 680. Both the heads floated on the same bore fixture and everything else, which was 4155. So we'll look at the Sanes first. So if you look at the 400, it's 257. That's really good. For a 23-degree head, that's not bad. It would have been probably 263 or so if it hadn't had the chamber softening. However, the one that's most impressive to me is a 600 number. It flows 335 at 600. That's strong. That's what I mean about the raised runner stuff. It really helps those numbers there. 343 at 7, and it peaks out at 350 at 1 inch. If you notice, it kind of backs up right here. This is right the area where the spark plug is. And I can tell you I could probably grind that out and fix some of that, but I didn't. And the reason why I didn't modify that chamber in that area is because of me thinking, hey, this chamber is CNC ported from the factory. I bet they make a shelf piston for this. So I told the customer, hey, you know, they should have a shelf piston for this thing from Diamond, because the idea was to save himself some time. He wouldn't have to buy a custom piston. You'd get a shelf one from Diamond. It'd be no big deal. Diamond, I don't know if he got a bad salesman, but had no idea that these heads even existed. Thought they were custom, which, I mean, they are ported that way, but the chambers weren't, and they don't have them molded. So me trying to save him money, he still had to send in the head and get it laser scanned to do it, even though I'm going to go ahead and tell you that's an 11X chamber. You would think that they had that. Anyway, so peak number was 350. Now this is the Sane, so it reads a little bit lower than the Superflow, and you'll see Superflow in a minute. The exhaust, that's strong. 400 is 205. At 6, it's 240, and peaks at 255. Really, really strong numbers. And that's what that 55-degree valve job does. It also has a bigger throat on the exhaust. Usually the bigger throat hurts the exhaust flow, but not when you do a 55-degree seat. It does make it flow worse here at the lower lifts, which at that one and that one, I don't care if it flows those, because you know where it reverses flow? Right there. So having those worse there is fine by me. Now for the Superflow. Superflow reads a little bit higher, as you can tell. 258, and then look, 306 at 5, a strong number there. 339 at 6, really, really strong. And then it peaks at, all the way out here at 1, see it doesn't really back up on the Superflow. And it peaks at 1 inch valve lift at 356. And actually, if I keep going up, because I was curious, it almost hits 360 at 1050, but no one ever getting there. Most people won't get there. Most people get to 1 inch. But what's interesting about this is whenever you look back at the flow tests I did with my own personal headhunter heads, they flowed like 350, 353. I flowed all 8. They were all in the 350 range. This one's only a few CFM better at peak, and it is much bigger. Just to give you an idea, my cross-sectional area, the minimum cross-section on mine was 2.3. This is 2.77, much larger. So that number they aren't that much better as far as peak flow. However, if you look at the 600 number, it's a good 15 CFM better there. So bigger port sometimes doesn't always gain so much here, but it can gain in other areas too. This exhaust flow, again, strong. It's a really good head. This thing should make a ton of power. Should just really be something great. The next one I get to do for a raised runner will be the 10XRI, which it should be a beast. Hopefully it's amazing because it's got a bigger intake valve at a 218. It's a much raised up port. It's a much larger port. So that one should be interesting, but keep up to date on that one. You guys take care.